What the heck is Formula One?
Pole position, strategy,
yachts and parties,
safety car, Ferrari.
beautiful corners.
Oh, right, okay. There's a car in front of you. Try and overtake it.
Oh, I hate you so much. Hello, you fools. Welcome back to another Formula Fools podcast. I'm David, your self-appointed expert, and with me is Skin, who is the resident fool on this podcast.
Hello.
Hello, Skin.
Hello, Dave. Thank you for having me.
You're here every week. I can't really, without you, it's just Disco and Disco talking about F1.
Well, I mean, people do solo podcasts.
They do, yeah. But the concept that we've got going on here with the fools, doesn't make a lot of sense.
That
with me.
would be interesting.
Yeah,
Dave answering questions no one asked.
To be fair, I'm just known for blabbing on quite a lot, so I could definitely just ask myself questions and then give myself a great answer.
Do you reckon you could do a solo podcast?
No, I could. You put me in this room on my own for like an hour, I would not stop talking.
There's no way I could
just about Williams as well.
I can barely talk to people. It boggles my mind that people just sit down. Anyway, that's very off topic.
Yeah, well. From pit lane antics to racing riddles, we're here to make you laugh, question your sanity, and question. Oh my God, you threw me off with all that shit. There, it's your fault.
Sorry, mate. Sorry.
Sit back, buckle up. It's time for Formula Fools. Obviously, we don't have the thing anymore. I'm going to keep mentioning that for the rest of the season.
Perfect. Yep, that won't get annoying.
No, it's not going to.
As annoying as the thing was.
We may as well just carry on playing it. So this week we're talking about disqualifications and how a driver or a car can be disqualified from a Formula One session, whether it be qualifying or race probably being a more important disqualification because there's no coming back from it. People have been disqualified from qualifying sessions before, but then have been able to start from the pits or...
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, that's worth mentioning before we start recording, Dave. I could have asked questions about that.
Okay, well, have a think and have a think and then come back to me in 5 to 6 business years.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, recent events, we saw Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton and Pierre Gasly all get disqualified. Charles and Pierre was for the weight of their car being under the minimum required weight after the race.
Mm-hmm.
And Lewis was for the thickness of his plank assembly being it was too small, too thin after the race. We'll go both of these kind of get brought up in the 5 that I've spoken about.
Yep.
But I feel like you've got some questions for me around what happened with these 3 at the weekend.
Yeah, for sure. So, well, Ferrari, after it all happened, Ferrari came out with a statement where they said about Charles's disqualification where the car was underweight.
Yeah.
Their explanation was that they only did a one-stopper, which they weren't expecting to do. Mm-hmm. I assume.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone was planning for a 2-stop.
Yeah, most people were planning for a 2-stop.
I'm just trying to figure out how they're going to try and come up with an excuse for that.
Yeah, so what they said was, I really hope I'm not making this up. It seems weird that you haven't heard about it, but I'm pretty sure their explanation was, so they did a one-stopper, the tyres degraded much more than they expected, so they lost weight off the tyres.
Yeah.
Which made the car come in underweight. Does that strike you as like
the logic is there.
Okay.
Like every lap you drive, the tires are getting thinner and thinner.
Yeah.
So the logic of like physical weight lost, but you see how like every other driver didn't get disqualified for that apart from Pierre. So it seems odd that every other team didn't do that.
Yeah. Okay.
But theirs did.
Yeah. Okay. And it seems odd that like surely going into the race, they were like planning for a 2-stopper, but like thought a 1-stopper maybe was a chance depending on some things. Like everyone seemed to be uncertain about the number of stops, right? It wasn't like they were definitely 2-stopping.
Yeah.
So if you've got like a plan C, I think McLaren kept calling it plan C. It became obvious what plan C was pretty quickly. Yeah. It was a 1-stopper. Yeah. You've got like this plan C where you're like, I mean, worst case scenario, we can always 1-stop.
Yeah.
Surely you're like, you've made sure, like, if we end up doing that, we're not getting disqualified. Like, yes.
These guys spent millions of dollars to go racing, and they just like they may as well have just not showed up in China because both cars disqualified. Like, it's a very weird scenario that they've found themselves in, especially both cars being disqualified for 2 different reasons. Because I would assume then that Charles's plank wasn't too thin, and Lewis's car wasn't underweight. Because otherwise they would surely say they were disqualified for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
I don't know if they were or not. I'm just reading what the FIA posted on Instagram. But yeah, like it's a very weird situation. And I think the fact that no one else was no one else was in question whether they were underweight or not, is probably more that Ferrari just made a mistake. And instead of coming up with an excuse of, oh, the tyres did this, they should just put their hands up and say, yeah, we fucked up.
Yeah, okay.
Have you got a question about the plank? Because I want to kind of go through that.
Yeah, I've got questions about the plank. Okay. So, well, yeah, okay. Firstly, like, just remind me about the plank. So the plank is like a chunk of metal that sits under the car, right?
Yeah.
And so if you have some downforce, it scrapes along the ground, degrades a little bit.
Yeah.
And then, so I presume it has to be some sort of thickness at the end of the race. So it can only degrade so much.
Yep.
Otherwise you get disqualified.
Yep.
But for what reason? Like, what unfair advantage do you get by grinding the bottom of your car along the fucking pavement for a little bit longer than you planned to? Like,
yeah, it's a great question. I think 5-6 years ago, before we got the ground effect cars, the rule was still the rule. The rule hasn't changed. It's the same rule. But I think the reason we didn't see this as much back then was because running the car low to the ground was slightly less important then as what it is now. We've now got ground effect aerodynamics. So all of the aerodynamics is generated from underneath the car. So it's literally the floor of the car to the floor, like the track surface. The smaller you can get that gap, the faster your car is going to be, because as these cars drive along, they're being sucked to the pavement, basically. So that's the pavement. They're on the sidewalk. But that's like the basic philosophy of all of these cars. So they've like set up their ride height and it's just a bit too low. And so Lewis's car has been scraping a bit too much along the floor. It's a very easy mistake to make, especially on a sprint weekend, because we have the sprint qualifying, the sprint race, the main qualifying and the main race. There's more sessions where they're actually not allowed to change the plank or like work with the car or change the setup or anything, because within these sessions, the car goes into parc ferme. You're not allowed to do major things to it. So, there's a lot of their excuse for this one was, oh, well, it wore down a bit too much in the sprint and then it wore down even more in the race. So like, oh, it was only 0.5 out. And I can understand that, but also just make your ride height slightly higher. Like, it's not a difficult thing to do. You were just trying to gain the maximum out of your setup, and it's bit you.
Right. But so that is the reason for that being a disqualification is like if your car's lower, you're getting more of an advantage.
You're going to be faster.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is weird because neither of them two were fast in the race. Well, they were there. I mean, they were okay, but like they didn't challenge for a podium.
Yeah. But also, I still find it weird, things like that. Like, surely, like, why would you have that rule in place? Like, surely you want the cars to be as fast as possible. So you want the cars to be as low as possible. Like, why would you stop people from making their car faster? It's
more of a safety thing because we used to run, like, think about how low the driver sits in the car. Like, you've seen the cars, like, really up close now. The driver is sitting so close to the floor. So if they were to just, if an aerodynamicist had his dream, the driver's arse would be touching the floor. There would be nothing separating the driver and the floor, because that is the most aerodynamic, like getting the center of gravity as low as possible and having the car as low as possible to the floor is the best thing for them. Obviously without it just literally scraping along the floor. So yeah, that would be their dream. And it's more of a safety thing to just say, you'll hear in Singapore quite a lot that the driver's bums get hot because the plank is scraping so much. And so it generates heat up into the bum. And they'll literally feel like they'll feel that temperature going through into the cockpit. And so it's a safety thing to make sure they're not going to overheat, they're not going to get injured or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, cool. And then on the weight ones, like that seems obvious. Obviously, if your car's lighter, then it can go faster, basically. Yep. So they've gained an unfair advantage there. Yep. My question there is, so they weigh the cars at the end of the race, and there's just some number you have to be. Do they weigh the cars at the start of the race as well? Yeah,
so cars are weighed. You'll see throughout qualifying as well, especially. There's a weigh bridge as soon as you go into the pits on the whatever side it is, right hand side, left hand side, whichever direction the track's going. So there's a weigh bridge there at all times, and during free practice sessions and qualifying sessions, they will randomly select cars to be weighed during them sessions. So like Lewis Hamilton, for example, he could pull in, there'll be a little sign that says 44 and he'll have to pull over and be weighed during them sessions. They don't do that in the race because it can obviously slow you down. There's no fair way to do it unless everyone just has to have a mandatory weight. So yeah, they don't do it during a race session. The reason they do it during quali and free practice sessions is because sometimes, so they have ballast as well on the car. So they'll have like just literal weights that they'll move to the front of the car or to the back of the car, depending on how the circuit is with undulations or like camber or whatever on the corners, so that then they can play with how the car is balanced. So it's like something every team does. They are just things that can be passed in and out of the car. So during them sessions, they'll do it so that then making sure that cars aren't going out, setting a belt at a time, coming back in the pits, putting the weight back in. So when they're weighed at the end of the session, they're all good. For the race, they'll be weighed before they go out and after the race. I'm pretty sure they may just be weighed when they come back in, and there's a set weight that they need to get to.
Right. Okay.
But it's under the team. It's the team's like they have to manage it and they have to maintain that weight and make sure they're above that weight.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a legit like, we've had it in history quite a lot with underweight under cars that are underweight, but whenever it happens, it's just the team have fucked up and they just need to put their hands up and say we made a mistake.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So that's probably another question on that Charles one. So is that the solution, that those things you're talking about that are essentially just weights that you can just play with the balance of the car?
Yeah.
Is that the solution to a problem like that? If you're worried about the tires degrading more, you just fucking chuck an extra 1 kilo one of them on?
Exactly.
Like, okay.
Exactly that. Yeah. It's add more ballast to your car. Everyone runs race simulations for how the tires are going to degrade, and Pirelli will say to them like, this is the weight of the tire when you put it on the car, and this will be the weight of the tire after you've done X amount of laps. So you can then work out kind of a weight loss per lap. So then if you are going to go over what if Pirelli give you a 20 lap window, let's say, you can easily work out like how much weight the tire is dropping on average per lap. So if you go 25 laps, you can say, okay, well, this is how little the tire is going to weigh after 25 laps of running it. We need our car to be at this weight minimum so that we pass that at the end of the race. And it's just something that every other team did, and Ferrari and Alpine didn't do.
Alpine,
got it right.
Well done, Dave.
So yeah, it's just a genuine error on their part, and it's something that I don't imagine they will make that mistake in the near future, because you don't usually make mistakes like that twice, because it's very embarrassing. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, that did look quite embarrassing, and it's really weird, like seeing a team with like 2 disqualifications. You see that and you're like, wow, these bastards must just be cheating. Like,
Lewis Hamilton's in the car as well, Skin, so it checks out.
Right, okay. like if a team has
I'm joking.
Yes, of course. If a team has both drivers disqualified, you're like, obviously they're just trying to gain some advantage. They're just filthy cheaters. But then it's like 2 totally different things, and both by such small margins.
Exactly, It's just shit.
They just fucked it up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Like when I first saw Ferrari double DNF, I was like, oh, and I only saw Ferrari double DNF because of weight issues. I didn't realize Lewis's was because of the plank. So I was just like, oh, they are cheating. Like they're trying to run the car too light. And then when I actually saw the report come out, I was like, oh, okay, this is more of a like shit look on Lewis's part because they just got the setup wrong, and shit look on Charles's part because they just didn't put weight on it. And they'll rectify it. They'll be fine. They'll bounce back, I'm sure. Probably need to as well, because Williams had beaten them in the championship. We didn't mention that in last week's pod.
No, we didn't. And can you explain that to me actually now that you have mentioned it? Because they're on the same points.
Yeah.
So what do they use if two teams are on the same points? What are they using to say Williams is?
I think it's who has had the latest highest finish. So because Alex, I don't know. I'm not 100% Skin.
All right, thanks.
I'll find out for next week and I'll let you know.
I'm a self-appointed expert over there.
Yeah, you know what? I walked right into that one, didn't I? When I scripted expert on the front of every podcast. So I've written down a few other ways that people can be disqualified or cars can be disqualified, and I just want to run through them so that you know what to look out for in the future. Technical regulation breach. So if a car fails post-race scrutineering, it can be disqualified. This can be underweight cars, illegal flexing wings or floors, which has been quite a big topic early in this season as well. The rear wings or the front wings flexing too much under pressure down straights and things like that. Yeah. So it's a big topic at the moment. McLaren passed in Australia and in China, but a lot of teams were saying their wing was flexing quite a lot based on the camera angles. And there's been a bit of debate around that one. But McLaren's, they keep passing the FIA thing. So I don't know why people keep arguing it.
All right. What? Sorry. Do you have any idea how they're measuring that? Obviously, like underweight cars is easy. You just pop them on the scales.
Yeah, and that's why this one is a lot more controversial. They do weight tests on the wings before they're allowed to go on the car. So they'll do a weight test and submit all the information to the FIA, or the FIA there to witness it at the factory to show how much weight it takes to bend the front wing, so that they know how much pressure of air is going to hit it for how much it will flex. But it's mainly on track. It's mainly just based on, there are cameras that face the rear of the car, cameras that face the front wing. Them cameras will show, you can literally see the wings. I'll show you some clips afterwards. You can literally see the wings like move as they accelerate down a straight and all the wind starts to hit it. And it's just how much it's moving. Because you can't have something, say, literally still that is, like a front wing or something. It's impossible. So, it's just to what end is it moving? And there is a limit on that. And then excessive plank wear. So that all of these ones kind of fall under that one. Number 2, fuel irregularities. So at the end of each race, teams need to provide at least 1 liter fuel sample to the FIA, so they can test the fuel to make sure that they're not putting that they're running fuel to the regulations set by the FIA, and they're not running any illegal fuels that can make the cars faster or perform better or burn at a higher temperature or anything like that. And we've got an example of that after the mid-roll. Number 3 is exceeding power unit consumption limits. This is something that is a bit like, I put it on the list because you can be disqualified for it, but like if a team tried to do it, they are literally trying to cheat. So you get you get certain amounts of each component of your power unit per season. So like say like the MG UK, I think you get 3 allocations of that component for the engine per season. And in the last race of last season, Charles had to take a new MG UK because his was like on the way out and it was like not performing properly. So he had to take one and he got a 10-place grid drop or something like that for it, because that's the penalty for taking a new one out of your allocation.
Okay.
Now, the reason you can be disqualified is if you don't tell the FIA you're going to do that and you fit a new one, you can be disqualified for fitting a part outside of your allocation.
Right.
I've included it because it can happen. It hasn't happened. And if it did, the team would they would be shat all over, because it's crazy illegal to do something like that and not tell the FIA you're doing it. Just like changing a gearbox. If you were to change a gearbox, don't tell the FIA, you're not going to get penalized for the correct thing in between sessions, this is. And then, you're not going to receive the correct penalty. So it's kind of the same thing there. So you could change a gearbox and not tell the FIA.
Right, okay.
Which happens quite often.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, okay. Sorry, so say a team does that, change a gearbox or a power unit. Nearly said power box. Power unit, and doesn't tell the FIA.
Yeah.
How do you get found out about that? Like, is that, again, like the weight seems easy, right? Like anytime they're coming in on the track, you can just pop them on the scales and weigh the car. Yeah. Like, are they checking the power units and the gearboxes as regularly, or are you just sort of hoping that if someone, or are you just waiting for someone to report it?
Well, kind of both. So like all teams will track each other's speeds and acceleration and things like that. Like everyone there's so much data around all these cars, and all the teams can see each other's data like fairly easily. They're spying on each other, or it's just made public even to us. You can kind of see when someone's got a new power unit in just based on their acceleration and their top speed, because it's going to perform better than what their previous one was. So teams could report it and say, we suspect they've changed power unit without telling anyone. But also, if you watch free practice sessions mainly, you'll see in all the garages, there are FIA people with FIA bibs on and shirts on and whatever, and they're checking the tires that are coming off. They're checking the car components that are going on and off the car. They're checking after a qualifying session that the car isn't being worked on or changed in any way. And there'll be one or maybe multiple people, like 4 or 5 maybe, FIA representatives per team to just stand in the garage and watch what's happening. So they could also see something or scan a barcode on a gearbox before it's gone in, as it's entered the track, and then when it leaves the track and say, oh, this isn't the same gearbox. So there's so many ways that this won't happen.
Right.
But if it was to ever happen, you can be disqualified for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Crikey.
Yeah. Detailed. Tire or DRS violations. So tires meaning running the wrong compound. So if you were to go into the pit and put 3 hard compound and 1 medium compound, disqualification, it's illegal. And we've had this before with George Russell when he stepped in for Lewis Hamilton in 21 in the Mercedes. I think Lewis got COVID or something, couldn't race, so George stepped up. George pitted. They put Valtteri's tires on George's car. He went out, did a lap. They had to swap it again. I think because he changed it within 1 lap, he didn't get disqualified. But Mercedes made the mistake. And DRS, if the DRS flap opens above, that was bad that way, opens above 85 millimeters, it is then illegal and disqualification because you're going to gain way more of an advantage than your opponents.
Okay.
And then outside assistance, we literally saw this in Brazil last year, and Oscar almost could have done it. So if you spin and get beached like Oscar did in Australia this year, and you're spinning your wheels, you can't move. If a marshal was to run onto track and push you to get going again, because that's all you need is a quick push and then you can go, that is illegal, disqualification. Hulkenberg in Brazil span, got beached like Oscar did last year and couldn't move. The marshals came on, gave him a push, he carried on going, they disqualified him.
Even though like he would probably almost certainly didn't ask the marshal to touch his car.
Yeah, doesn't matter. It's against the rules.
What the
You're not allowed to do it. There was a big crash, I think might have been Silverstone or something. I can't remember. A few years back, George was in the Mercedes and he basically, like, him and Guan Yu Zhou had to come in together. Guan Yu Zhou flipped, slid on his head, hit the barriers, a big crash. George pulled over because he was concerned about Guan Yu, jumps out the car and is helping the marshals to get Guan Yu out the car. George then went, it was a big red flag. George goes back to the FIA and he went up to the stewards and said, can I jump back in the car and race? And they said, no, you're not allowed to. A marshal has touched the car and you got out of your car during a live session. So that means you've retired. You have by default retired. And so he couldn't jump back in the car.
Bloody hell.
We're now going to look at some historical disqualifications from the Formula One history books. First up, I'm going to throw out there one of my favorite ones. If you've watched the Senna documentary, I don't know if they mention it in the Senna Netflix show, can't remember. But Ayrton Senna, Japan, 1989. Ring a bell, Skin?
Yeah, it does. Yep.
Yep. You watched the documentary with me, so.
Yeah, you made me. Yeah.
Yeah. No, Skin. You made me. So it's probably one of the most controversial moments of Senna's career. They were going into a chicane. Senna was about to overtake Prost on the inside. Prost has turned into him. They've both kind of crashed out.
Yeah.
Senna didn't, he did receive a push from the marshals, but that wasn't illegal at the time. And he got his car going again, went through the chicane, carried on going. I don't think he won the race, but he won the world championship. That's the most important thing to note there. Was then promptly disqualified from the race after a very long delay to the podium celebrations. They all were in a room, big arguments, there's camera shots of it. He got disqualified, meaning he didn't win the world championship, and Alain Prost did. So the reason it was so controversial is because you could get marshal assistance at that time. He only broke his front wing, so he went in, pitted and got it fixed and then carried on. They disqualified him for weaving through the tire, chicane in the chicane. So he went through the slalom that's there to slow you down for if you have to use the escape road. He went through that and carried on. They disqualified him for that, which is not illegal. And they said, you're not allowed to do it. You're supposed to turn around and go back against the traffic and then rejoin the track that way, which is stupid. It was a French FIA president and a French driver with Alain Prost who then went on to win. So bias.
Crikey.
And yeah, it was massive uproar. Ron Dennis could provide multiple examples after the fact of this happening in the past and no one getting a penalty or a disqualification for it. So
yeah. Well, surely that's the whole point of the chicane, right?
Yeah. And if you mess your braking up, and it happens all the time in Monza as well. If you people mess their braking up and they'll go through the slalom all the time because it's not illegal. Never was there, never isn't now. Never isn't now. Good
never
English.
Isn't. Exactly. Okay. Well then, next one, Michael Schumacher, Belgium, 1994. He won. He had won the race. I don't know how to word that. He was winning the race. He did quite well in the race, as Michael Schumacher did, I'm led to believe. And then, the FIA found excessive plank wear on his Benetton he was driving at the time. So he was disqualified for that. Yeah. Damon Hill ended up winning. So you
obviously
were quite fond of, I believe. Am I thinking of the right bloke? Didn't you saw him?
Saw him, got a photo with him. He was not impressed.
Yeah, that's
Sorry,
right.
Damon.
Yeah.
He was mid-conversation with someone and me just being the goofy little fan that I am. I was just like, hey, Damon, can I just get a quick photo? And he's like, oh, yeah, okay.
Okay.
No, he was all right.
Yeah. Well, he got to win that race. So that was
he did get to win that race, yeah. And also just like, again, like it just shows that this plank stuff with Lewis now is like, it's been in Formula One. That was 30 years ago. And it's happened again now. So it's like, it's something that happens semi-regular, but is not like, it's there is a line to the rule. And even if you're a millimeter over, then you're over, or 0.5 for Lewis, then you're over. And it's a hard line. And they've been drawing that hard line since the 90s.
Yeah, fair enough. I can't really, I don't, like 0.5 of a millimeter seems like a wild thing to make a big deal about, but like, I don't.
You have to draw the line somewhere.
Exactly. There's no better solution, is there? Like,
it's just like kicking. At some point, I always think this with AFL, like AFL, when there's like a mark and then they fucking run like 17 meters past where they caught the ball, I'm just like, probably not 17 meters, but they go at least a meter or two. I'm just like,
yeah, sure.
For me, coming from F1 where there is a line to everything and it's a hard line, AFL just don't care.
Yeah, fair.
They just don't care with things like that. But then the pitch is fucking huge, so that's probably why they don't care.
Yeah,
that 1 meter extra isn't it's for some of them kicks. It's not the biggest.
I think that sport's like AFL is also just like so chaotic. Like, it's so, I don't know. It's so many things are like left up to the umpire's decision, especially like, and there are so many cases where like they'll make a decision that everyone disagrees with. And in hindsight is obviously wrong, but it's like, it's just, you have to accept, like there's only so much you can do in the moment, I suppose. Whereas I guess that's not the case with a sport that's like so fucking analysed to the nth degree in every different thing. Like,
it's crazy. But anyway, moving on. Sebastian Vettel, Hungary 2021. So it's quite a recent one. Sebastian Vettel finished P2 in an Aston Martin and then was disqualified after the fact because he didn't provide the 1 litre fuel sample to the FIA. So he couldn't provide the full fuel sample. They'd not saved enough fuel during the race. They'd underfueled the car at the beginning and that was it. P2 taken away.
Radio.
Disappointing for Seb.
Yeah, that sucks. Why has it got to be a lit? That's it. Yeah. God, this sport annoys me.
You probably provide like 0.99 litres. And
which is surely enough fuel to get a good idea of like.
For sure. Yeah. 800 mils is probably enough, but they're like, we need a litre.
That's so bizarre.
Yeah, it's weird. It's very weird, but
I guess again though, is that a bit of a weight thing as well though? Like if you can't provide enough fuel, then you started with too little fuel, so your car's lighter than it should be.
Well, yeah, potentially.
An argument there.
But the weight is actually, they drain the fuel and then weigh the car. So like Charles was overweight. He was just above the weight limit when he was retired, when he was disqualified this weekend, and then they drained the fuel out and that's when he dropped below the weight limit. So the fuel kept his weight up. Yeah. I think Lewis was disqualified last year or the year before as well for the same thing. His car was just overweight and then they drained the fuel underweight.
Crikey. Okay. And then 1976, James Hunt won the Spanish Grand Prix, but after the race, his McLaren M23 was found to be too wide. Yeah. Too wide.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't heard of that one before.
I think this may be one of the only times it's happened.
Right. Okay. And the explanation was tyre expansion at high speeds.
That's what McLaren said.
Right.
But then what happened was, so basically Niki Lauda was driving in a Ferrari and he was like, you want to watch the film Rush? Great film. Okay. And it's a drama, not a documentary as well. And it depicts the rivalry of Niki Lauda and James Hunt. And Niki was driving behind him and he was like, he came out of the car and he was like, we need to protest something on that car is illegal. Like they can't be this much faster than us. Okay. So they protested like a bunch of things and one of them was the width of the car. And then the FIA measured it and it was, I can't remember how far over. It was like so close to the thing as well. And it was just over. McLaren said tire expansion, but then they had to change the suspension, the way the suspension was laid out on the rear of the car. And then they lost all the performance because they had to change all the rear suspension to pull the rear width in to the regulations.
Wait, so they lost the performance moving forward?
Yeah, so the rest of the season, their performance was halted, yeah.
Right, okay. Didn't they end up getting that race win reinstated though?
I think it was reinstated, yeah.
So but that whole tyre expansion argument worked.
Was probably true, yeah. Okay. But also, this is the thing back then is like, people were just, it was so dog eat dog. Like you would just protest anything because it's a lot more difficult to analyze like we can now with like fuel regulations and this and that and like being low. Like it's a lot, like the car height back in the day, they used to do paint rollers with like a toilet thing and they would just like roll it underneath the car. And if that went under the car, like that was how you like checked the distance under the car. I think they do that in some tin top racing. It's not a legit paint roller, but it's a device similar.
I read it.
Yeah. I've got a quick game to finish us off, Skin. It is called China or China Not.
Wow.
Yes, I know. ChatGPT helped me out with that one. And by help me out, I mean he wrote the entire thing.
I never would have picked that.
So it's a true or false game where Skin has to guess whether I've got a wild F1 fact from the Chinese Grand Prix, whether it's in the past or this year, which is China, meaning real, or China Not, meaning fake.
Yep.
I had to explain that one to you just in case you couldn't get it.
No, I'm with you.
So round one, the very first Chinese Grand Prix in 2004 was won by Rubens Barrichello, making him the first and only Brazilian driver to ever win in China.
China.
True?
True.
China. Correct. Go Skin.
Thank you.
Number 2.
I remember it well.
Yep.
I was big into my F1 in 2004.
When you were 9. Go Skiing.
Yeah.
Due to strict government regulations, all F1 drivers must carry a Chinese alias during the race weekend for Chinese media and things like that so they can...
China Not.
Shit. Skin, you're too good.
Come on, Dave.
Let me read the rest of it.
Challenge
me. Let me read the rest of it. In 2019, Max Verstappen was temporarily listed as Wei Shen on all official documents.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Chad wrote it.
All right.
Okay, the Shanghai International Circuit was specifically designed to resemble the Chinese character, and I'll put it on screen because it means Shang. I'm definitely butchering the pronunciation on that one, but I'm not going to try and put the accent on it. Meaning above or ascend. So when you actually look at the Chinese symbol on the doco there, the layout is resembling that Chinese symbol.
Wonderful question, Disc. I'm going China Not. That does not look like a racetrack to me, that symbol.
Incorrect. That's true.
That's yep. Okay. That's unfortunate.
And this was something I did not know until I was doing China or China Not. So we're all learning something with this fantastic game.
Thank you, Dave.
It's going to shock me if all teams up and down the grid aren't just copying this game off us by next week. Well, that wraps up another lap at the Formula Fools podcast. We hope you've enjoyed the ride as much as we did, and it's now your turn to join the Fools family by connecting with us on socials. Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, we are Formula_Fools, and on Facebook, we are Formula Fools.
We are also a podcast with audio platforms, Spotify, Apple, things of that nature, and you can... What the fuck am I saying? You can leave a rating and review. That's what I say every week. That's the words I'm looking for. Rating and review. That would help a great deal. Clicking follow, also very helpful. Or subscribe over on YouTube. That would be the dream. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. We're going to read some of them reviews out next week as well. So make sure you get them in. Also, as I mentioned earlier on, I mentioned it in the other podcast. Guess what? We're recording them on the same day. Haha. Let's reveal the curtain. Go and follow us on Instagram because we're doing qualifying and race predictions as well as qualifying and race thoughts. And some of your best thoughts or some of your best predictions might be brought up on the podcast if we've got some good stuff. And we mentioned some on the Chinese Grand Prix race review podcast that came out last Friday. So get around the Instagram. Thank you for joining us at Formula Fools, where every turn is a chance for a good laugh. We'll see you next time.